Hello everyone! Today I'm going to show you how I make a reverse rig with a set of pliers, a big saltwater hook or a big freshwater hook, either the finesse TRD or the big TRD, and a few different tungsten nail weights. First thing we're going to do is take our big hook. We're going to kind of bore a hole in the flat end of the finesse TRD. And so I'm trying to get right dead center in the bait. And then every time I make a little quarter turn, just keep doing it. And what I'm trying to do is bore a little hole for the tungsten nail weight to sit in. For the finesse TRDs, I like using a 1/32 ounce tungsten nail weight. And for the big TRD, I use a 1/16. You can mess around with those weights a little bit, but that's generally where I start, most of the time where I stay. I'm going to test fit it, make sure it's going to fit, and then very carefully I'm going to put a little bit of super glue on the end of it. So the reason I'm doing this is because Z-Man plastics are super durable, but they also resist getting these nail weights put into them. They're elastic, so they have kind of a springiness to them. And if you're not careful, and drop the nail weight, you might super glue it to the fly tying bench there. But if you're not careful, those nail weights just pop right back out. Especially, casting and shooting these baits out a little ways, or if there's a fish on the other end, thrashing around, those nail weights just go flying. And after a while, these tungsten nail weights add up. So if you take the time and do a few of these before you head out, it only takes a few minutes. Let them dry, then you put them back in the bag, and they're ready to fish, and they last, they last forever. Like I said, the Z-Man stuff is very durable. And I'm going to do a few different colors here. This one is a goby color. Same thing, I'm going to turn it a quarter turn every time I shove that big saltwater hook in the flat end. Just creating like a little pocket there. Probably different ways to do this. Maybe a very small copper pipe, stick in there and cut a little hole in there. But this works for me, and I think most people have some kind of big hook on hand. I test fit it again. Make sure it's able to go all the way in there. If I'm fishing rocks, I'll leave a little piece of that sticking out, and it'll tick the rocks and make like a clicking sound, which I kind of like. But if I'm fishing weeds, I want that nail weight buried all the way in the bait. And most of the time what I'm going to be doing, at least this time of year, is fishing weeds. And I want that bait with the nail weight concealed inside of it so it doesn't snag the weeds. Get some of the excess super glue off my little pliers there. Also helps if these are old pliers. Probably don't want to use your best pliers for this because it kind of makes a mess with the super glue. Let's see what's up next. That's the deal color. It's like an electric shad with some black flake in it. It's a good color. It looks a little bit like a bait fish, a little bit like a herring, a little bit like a bluegill. Looks a little bit like everything. Maybe a little bit like a crawfish. Some of the crawfish around here, they have kind of a bluish tinge to their belly. So, it's a pretty universal color. I like to put some scent on these baits too when I'm fishing them. A Procure crawfish scent is a favorite of mine. If I'm fishing underneath herring, I'll put a little herring scent on there, or some Smelly Jelly Bass Feast. It's a good all-around scent if they're on sunfish. And I've got my last 1/32 ounce nail weight. I'm going to test fit it. Looks pretty good. Put a little super glue on it. You don't have to cover the whole thing. It kind of spreads around as you put it in there. I use the blunt end of the pliers to kind of press it in. And clean up my pliers a little bit. And let that bait dry. Doesn't take too long for them to dry. A couple minutes is really all you need. But I find it's easier to do this at home than trying to do this in a bouncing boat in the wind. I'm a little more accurate here. And that's the Big TRD. Same thing. I'm going to go in the flat end with the big saltwater hook. For reference, that's about a 10-aught beast hook, owner beast hook. But something in that size, some kind of heavier gauge hook. That'll remove a lot of material. I've got a 1/16 ounce tungsten nail weight there. These are Echo Pro tungsten nail weights, and they don't have as many ridges as some of the other baits. Yeah, I test fitted that nail weight, and I needed to do a little bit more digging around in there. So I'll go another loop around, spinning it about a quarter turn each time. Grabbed a different nail weight for some reason. It's a little better. I can make that work, I think. Yeah. A little more super glue. You can also reuse these nail weights. One of them, I can tell is older because it has some residual plastic on it. So if you wear out the bait, make sure to pull out the nail weight with some pliers. You can clean it up with a utility knife carefully so you don't, cut yourself. And then use it again. As long as you don't get cut off by a pickerel or, snagged on some deep wood or something like that, you can just keep reusing those nail weights. That's a newer color. I think it's called Snake Eyes, something like that. I'll list it all in the video description. Sometimes I mess up the color names and the bait names. Same deal. Rotate about a quarter turn after each stab with the big hook. Usually I go 2 full rotations, so that's about 8 times. Quarter turn each time. Try to keep it dead center. You don't want to stab yourself with that big hook either. So keeping it dead center helps with that. I'm going to test fit it. Yeah, that's looking pretty good to me. There's some other nail weights with like a screw mechanism. I don't find those work well at all with Z-Man baits. There's some other ones with these really exaggerated ribs and ridges and so forth. Sometimes those can be hard to just shove through the plastic. So I like the Eco Pro tungsten ones that they don't really have much in the way of ridges or resistance. Slide in pretty well, but you could use others. But I would avoid any of them that have that like a screw type mechanism to get in there. That's a newer color. That's a TW exclusive. I think it's black, blue, green pumpkin. First one I picked up already had a nail weight in it, so I was searching around to see if I could find another one. I thought about going back and doing one of the same color, and then no, I'll go back to the TW black, blue, green pumpkin. Sometimes I'm fishing around bluegill, and even though this bait doesn't really look anything like a bluegill, it's dark like some of the bluegill get. I don't know exactly why. Maybe sometimes around the spawn they get that real dark color to them. Depending on the water clarity, sometimes they're really dark. So I like the idea of this color anyway. I haven't really fished it too much. Same thing, a quarter turn. Using that big hook to bore out a hole for the nail weight. We're almost there, a couple more rounds. That big barb is removing some of the plastic. Heavy gauge hook helps too, but I think the barb is actually doing most of the work. Test fitted as before. See how well I did there. I think I can make that work with a little extra force. Get some super glue there. And then use the blunt end of the pliers to kind of push it in the rest of the way. And we're done. Clean up the super glue on my pliers before it dries into a big mess. And we'll let those dry there for a little bit. Next, we're going to go out in the water. I'm going to show you how I rig them up. Put the cap on the super glue. Here we go. Alright, I got a bunch of bags of Z-Man plastic. Looking for the perfect color. I was around some herring schools and I thought, put on that deal color. It kind of looks like some of the herring. Got to pick one of them out with the nail weight in it. I said this in another video, but I'll say it again. I first learned about this rig from the guys at Wired to Fish. Basically, it's just a Weedless Neko rig made from a TRD or a Big TRD. And I don't know if they came up with it first, but that's where I saw it first. So I'm giving them full credit. So I got my nail weight in the tail end there, and you go in through the skinny end. Now in the version I saw in Wired to Fish, they used an EWG hook. Now this one I've beaten up before. You can see the plastic's torn. But I'm using a Neko hook with a fluoro keeper that I tied in. If you don't want to do this step, there's a Owner Cover Hook HD, which uses the same kind of concept. It just costs a lot more than doing it yourself. But if you do it yourself, you can use any kind of Neko hook you like, or a different kind of hook, or any size, any gauge. I use the Mustad Titan X hooks a lot. That's what this is. There's a Gamakatsu Stinger hook. It's a G10S, something like that. I'll link it in the video description. It's hard to remember all these names. But it's a great hook in lighter weights, I think. Once it gets above, let's say a 2/0, it gets a little thick, a little heavy. But for the light stuff, it's great because it's a really thick wire. I mean, it's not so thick in the smaller sizes, but it just holds up well to bigger fish on lighter line with small hooks. Anyway, you just Texas rig it, cast it out, and it casts really well because it's tail weighted. It falls pretty well because of its shape. It's basically like a torpedo or something. So it falls fast to the ground, or the bottom of the lake, I guess. It casts well even in the wind, although I prefer to fish it in calmer areas like this. And you hop it along the bottom like a Ned rig. And the advantage now is that it's weedless. So you can fish through pretty gnarly stuff as long as you don't set that hook. As soon as you set that hook, the hook's coming out into whatever you set it into. It could be weeds, could be wood, could be whatever. So when you set the hook, you want to make sure a fish has picked it up. You can feel the fish, you can see the fish swimming away with it, and you won't have any trouble. All right, that's my version of the reverse rig. Thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. Just like all my other videos, I'll list all the gear in the video description, and I'll catch you on the next one. See ya!